had a very, I think, biased view of this battle, of this engagement. Why did it happen, and what were they fighting over? Right. One way that this story has been told is that this is just the culmination of the economic conflict between the Hudson Bay Company and the Northwest Company. You know, that these were this was part of the fur trade war, right? And the chaotic, violent Métis got involved, and things went to hell in a handbasket. Pretty soon we have a massacre. What I said previously is that a massacre is when there is a very unbalanced fight. A murder is when the person is not prepared, and you take the life of someone who is not picking a fight, right? That's murder. A massacre is when the fight is very unbalanced. A battle is a conflict between equals. And so it's only really in the last, I would say, 40 years that this has been typified as other than a massacre. I'm going to explain why, and sort of explore that. The Métis themselves, they celebrate this, as that song that I shared, the name of it, the Battle of Frog Plain, by Pierre Falcon. They celebrate this victory as a successful assertion of Métis control, of power, in the face of these thieving, entitled English who are coming into their country with, delusions of grandeur, that they're here and they're trying to steal. They have great pride in this event, and in the participants. These are patriots and they're nationalists. Who are these Selkirk settlers to claim our country? They only just got here, and they don't have relatives here. They have no strength. They can barely survive the winter, and they can't survive without our help. So, these are the plain truths that are observed by the Métis people, right? It's like, how absurd that they claim this is theirs, and they come out with their guns and they expect to respect their authority. The first thing that they do, they beat Governor Semple, and then they walk up to Fort Douglas, and they order the evacuation of all of the settlement. The Hudson Bay Fort is basically emptied, and the settlers are told, either you accept the Northwest Company and our presence here, or you can leave. You can go to Cumberland House. That'll be fine. Sail up north to up Lake Winnipeg to the far end. You'll find a Hudson Bay fort there, and you can stay there. The Métis, so and then they ride on to Fort Gibraltar with their load of pemmican and buffalo meat that is going to supply the Northwest Company, and possibly even be sold to the Great Lakes and the Americans that are down that way. One of the things that I didn't really emphasize in the last lecture, where I was talking about the Pemmican Proclamation, one of the purposes for the Pemmican Proclamation was to keep all of the supplies that were being created, all of the food stuff was being kept for the Selkirk settlement. But it was also meant to deprive the Northwest Company of those supplies that were, and they were in competition with Hudson Bay Company. And so Northwest Company was going to be deprived of the food. The Selkirk settlers were going to keep it, and that was the way that it was supposed to be, right? It didn't work out that way. You know, the Métis said, no, we're going to sell to whoever we want to. It's not your business who we sell the things from our land to, right? So this is a direct confrontation with that claim of sovereignty that the Hudson Bay Company has made. The English, or the settlers, you know, the Canadians back in Canada, in Ottawa, they call for an inquiry. Lord Selkirk is absolutely livid. He's enraged that this is happening. And so they send a British officer to come take statements from all of the survivors. Out of the 28, Hudson Bay Company employees, only 4 survived to take their statements. And instead he interviews the other, the 40 Métis men who were there. All of the Métis men were mounted. Francois Boucher, he goes to, this is the story that is reconstructed. I'm telling you the story that is reported. Francois Boucher goes to rides up to Semple's men and says, hey, we're just passing through. Don't mind us. We're on our way. Don't F with us, guys. And Semple and his Semple attempts to grab the reins of Boucher's horse, and a gun goes off. It's agreed upon that Semple's men fire first. And the Métis return fire. They immediately, unload their muskets at Semple's men, who are all standing around, and then they fall off their horses. Semple thinks that they all of the Selkirk settlers think, oh yeah, that was easy. We beat them. They've all fallen off their horses. No, those Métis men are lying on their backs, loading their guns. And then they all get up on a knee and fire again. They fire another volley at the Semple's men, who have no idea how to fight. They are not soldiers. At the end of the day, the inquiry finds that Hudson Bay Company and the Selkirk settlers, they depend upon the Métis to supply them with fish and with buffalo meat. Without these, this colony is going to fold up and blow away. It's just gonna go away, because these men cannot feed themselves. They're out of their element. They're out of their league. We need them. There's something else that has just happened in the world that is a bit important here. I haven't touched this particular piece of history, but where is America and Canada in 1816? What is their relationship like? Anybody?
They're establishing their own borders, right? Like, it's pre-Confederation for Canada, but like
definitely is. But
they're stopping each other,
another,
right?
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. That the Jay Treaty is still in the future. The Jay Treaty that stretches the chalk line from the Great Lakes to Puget Sound. That's going to be the 49th parallel and the medicine line between nations. That has not yet been made. But there's something else. What happens 4 years before 1816? What's going on?
War of 1812.
It looks like Mel just said it in the chat. Something about the
War of 1812?
Yeah,
War of 1812 and the raising of the White House.
Yeah. Gosh darn you guys, you burn our capital. Oh. Yeah, my Canadian friends never let me forget that. So yes, the War of 1812. It stretches actually to 1813 and 1814. So this is just 2 years before this battle that there's a an international conflict between the burgeoning United States growing very fast. They thought they could just sort of cakewalk into Canada and take it over, right? They thought that. And Canada just sort of sits back and defends the borders, and then whips down and goes burns the capital. Not great relations, not good times, and so the Canadians are very aware that if they push the Métis, they have no control over these people. These people have no allegiance to this new nation that is only just beginning to be dreamed of Canada, right? British North America is really what it is. They have no allegiance that way. And if they alienate these people on the frontier, maybe they will push them into the arms of the Americans. Because there's that network of settlement by French and by Métis people that is down through Pembina, North Dakota, down through the Great Lakes, all the way down down the Mississippi, all the way to the Rocky Mountains. In the United States has a base of Métis heritage, and so they're very concerned that if they come down hard on the Métis here in Red River, they will push them into the arms of the United States, and then what's going to happen? They don't have the military force sufficient to prevent greater economic, political, and military cooperation between the Métis and the U.S. traders. And so what choice do they have? All of the evidence and all of the motivation points for them to find all the Métis innocent. They acted in self-defense. Semple and the Selkirk settlers, they'd entered this area and provoked a conflict. And eventually, even Cuthbert Grant is exonerated and the charge is dismissed. Imagine this, though. Here are scrappy. They're very much looked down upon by Lord Selkirk, the 5th Earl of Selkirk, and the nobles who are sort of standing behind the British North America. These are half-breeds. They're uneducated. They wipe their noses on their sleeves, for goodness sake. This is the world turned upside down for them. And in the words of Lord Selkirk, this is either a farce, either they're kidding us, or this is foolish. This is folly. It's either farce or folly. That the Métis are found innocent, and his good Anglo settlers, they may not be good. They may not be ready and able soldiers, but it's a great blow to the entitlement of Britain that this occurs. Here is the monument to the Battle of Seven Oaks. It's if you look at that map, Fort Douglas is right above the name Winnipeg in the map there. That's Douglas, Point Douglas there, and the battle is on Frog Plain. It's that shield, the blue and white shield, just below Garden City, at the upper left there. Below is the dedication of the monument erected in June 19th, the anniversary, 1891. So, what is that? That's 75 years after the event, right? No, sorry, 85 years. Gosh, my math is bad. No, 75 years. I beg your pardon. 75. Here's the plaque that is erected at the bottom of the statue, and I want to, it's written in English and in French, but here's what it says. Here at Frog Plain on June 19th, 1816, Governor of the Red River Settlement, Robert Semple, and about 20 men were confronted a Northwest Company brigade from Assiniboine River, led by a young clerk, Cuthbert Grant. The Métis saw the settlement, as a threat to their way of life. Governor Semple, brave yet obstinate, was prepared to insist on his authority as governor. Tempers flared, and a shot was fired, and Semple and 20 of his men were cut down. Regardless of what Grant's plan had originally been, he was now committed to action and went on to capture Fort Douglas headquarters and the settlement. Let's unpack this, because there's some overt messaging here, and there's some sort of subtle communications about the parties involved and the justice that was done or injustice that was done here. What do you see here in this message?
Well, first place, they actually consider, Semple to be the governor of Red River.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Instead of just a kind of a local leader of a small group of men.
Yeah. 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 Small group of men who require support from, they need to be provisioned. Mel, I see your hand.
I mean, it's really like just talking about how the righteous English who were just, doing nothing, it's saying that they were, preyed upon and victims of these power-hungry Métis people is what it's pushing, especially of Cuthbert Grant, who, it doesn't matter what his plan was originally, but, now that the powder keg has been lit, he's going to go and do what he always wanted to do, which is to capture English territory, right?
He's a young clerk, by the way. He's a young clerk. He's an employee of the Northwest Company.
That's a really good point.
This is the story that comes down to us, is that this is a conflict not for nationhood or Métis sovereignty, but this is an economic competition between the Hudson Bay Company and the Northwest Company. So this, in that, I'm sorry if I've just sort of co-opted what you've said there, but he's a young clerk. He's not a chief, and that is how he is referred to and regarded by the Métis people. That he is a chief. He is a man of great authority whom people listen to.
It's also really interesting if you look at it the way that they're painting the Métis people as incompetent by being like, you're being led by this young clerk, like not somebody who's worthy of being followed, which is kind of like a double-edged sword, because it's like, okay, so you're following these people who don't have great leadership and aren't really put together, but yet they kind of mowed you down, which is kind of an interesting thing.
They kind of handed your ass to you.
Yeah, a little bit. So it's interesting the way that plays together, and like that delicate line that they have to walk to still depict these people as less than them, while still justifying the fact that, again, they got their asses handed.
Who fired the shot?
I beg your pardon?
Who fired the shot? They said the shot was fired in Temple, and it's 20 men are cut down. The Semple men fire a shot?
Oh, they did. They fired a shot. There's a discussion about whether it was a misfire or not. I mean, from the book, there's a discussion about who fired and why. Like, she says that the author, Tillet, she says, as they were leaving Fort Douglas, there was one misfire. Like one of their guns went off. These guys are not soldiers. They're not disciplined. They don't know, they don't know what they're doing.
What chapter in the book is this?
Misfire. Maybe it's, whatever happened, it was Semple's people who shot. And then all hell broke loose. Jennifer, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting too in that last sentence how it says, regardless of what Grant's plan had originally been, as if it's something.
Maybe he didn't even have a plan. We don't know. Nobody knows what he wanted.
Yeah, it just makes it seem like they were planning something worse when it's really just people trying to be like, hey, back up.
Yeah. Slow down. Like, whose country is this? Whose meat is this again? Don't we get to decide who we sell the meat that we've hunted to? Don't we do that? Don't we do that? Yeah, I read that line, tempers flared, a shot was fired, and so regardless of what Grant's plan had originally been, it questions, it introduces doubt as to whether he even had a plan. Nobody knows what his plan was, but regardless of what it was, now he's forced. He abandons that plan, if he had one, and now has to, capture the fort. It really sort of introduces the notion of uncertainty about planning and whether he's in control of this situation. Whether this is not what he intended, but he goes ahead and follows through.
So, I had spent a lot of time in St. Boniface in the 60s and 60s, but my understanding was Cuthbert Grant was actually a well-educated man.
He was, yes.
I think he was a lawyer.
Okay.
That's what Howie always told me, anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. He is known as a he was very comfortable in both worlds. Is the way I've come to understand him. Is that he was a buffalo hunter and a traveler of this country, but he was also educated and was a great orator. He was able to communicate with very different people, and he's identified now as a great nationalist. I mean, he is not the only one. There are others from this time. But I wasn't aware that he is a lawyer. It could very easily be,
and that could just come up through the book myth too. But
yeah. What else do we see here? The Métis saw this as a threat to their way of life. Like there's an echo here that we're going to hear later, right? That the arrival of the Europeans is going to. They're going to revolutionize the way of life, and it's going to lead to the treaties being signed, because the threat to their way of life is almost code for their primitive. They're dedicated to a way of life that is outmoded and based on the hunt and chase and the traveling through a wild country. That's code. Right? That's a dog whistle. It's saying they're like Indians. They're not civilized people. In my view. I mean, I think there's something there that this is the Hudson Bay Company and the Selkirk settlement is a threat to their way of life. No, they were thieves. Kristen Soto.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what you were saying, because I wanted to mention that, that first sentence that you said about them being a threat to their way of life. And then the second sentence that follows, Governor Semple, brave yet obstinate, was prepared to insist on his authority as a governor. So he was kind of like not ready to settle, not ready to discuss anything, just kind of like, this is how it's going to be, and we're not going to discuss anything. And of course, it's going to get turned into conflict because they're not ready to negotiate really anything.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons for script was that actually the Métis they had farms, they had, they had their own settlement.
Yeah. That's down the road, but let's, Mel, do you want to say something?
I think it's important to note that even in the first sentence that it says they confronted a Northwest Company brigade when they were a wagon train. Like, they weren't out there for war, so just like painting them. I know that we kind of talked this a little bit, but just picking on little words here and there.
Right.
That like they're already like they're looking for war. They're looking for a fight. Whereas that is not true at all to begin with.
Yeah, that's an interesting
in this situation
sort of double meaning there. Brigade can be a term applied to a military sort of group of men. It also, in this instance, the use of brigade can also be applied to a group of wagons that are traveling. It is a term that's used to describe these wagons that are moving together and acting in unison. So
I mean, that's really interesting. Like, looking at the use of language, obviously that's being put here is using words that can specifically be obscured and that have double connotative meanings, right? So I made a comment in the chat where it talks about like the shot was fired. Well, by specifically saying that it wasn't the English, then that allows people who don't quite know what's going on to, because of the rest of the pro-English sentiment, to interpret it that way, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, Governor Simple, brave yet obstinate. It's sort of like, incompetent. He's prepared to insist on his authority. Like, they're building him up. He's a good man, but stubborn, which is what you say when the guy loses. Like, you're trying to make him sound good after he's lost a battle, Well, he was a stubborn man, He was brave, but stubborn. He didn't know when he didn't have the upper hand, So, like, and this is the monument, right? This is the monument that is the public memory of the battle, okay? Very, like, there's a lot that's stacked into this. It is not a memory of the sort of the first armed resistance to British claims of sovereignty here. It is this can be this event is often pointed to as the first time that the Métis stand together and fight again. They share the purpose of defending their economy, their way of life, their access to resources against an invader. And that's the motive that Cuthbert Grant draws people in. He's written lots of letters to Isle of Cross, and then he takes his force down to Brandon and beats the Hudson Bay Company in Brandon, and then they come east to Red River to demonstrate that they are in control of this territory, and don't mess with us. Don't play. We're not here to play with you. They're here for their livelihoods. They're going to sell this buffalo meat to the Northwest Company, and if the Northwest Company wants to sell it to the United States, that's their business. But we're gonna make a living here in the way that we want to, because you don't pay enough. If you paid better, we'd sell to you. But Northwest Company will pay us what we want. So that's who we're selling to. So much to say. So, from the book now, from Tillet. I think it's page. My strip there's. But this is in your book. There's a discussion now of here we are in I guess section 2 of your book. You should be reading fully along. Part 2, I think it's page 85. No, 87. I beg your pardon. From people to nation. They now have a collective name. They call themselves Métis, or the Free People, or there are many names for this group, but they identify themselves as distinct. They have a common myth of descent or an originating story, and many of these stories are similar. That parentage comes from Soto or Cree, mothers or or communities, and a French or a Scottish father. They share that history, and they have a distinct shared culture. They associate with a specific territory now. That this whole region. This is when this book refers to the Northwest. Where are they referring to? They're referring to the region that lies to the west of Lake Superior and northward into the boreal forest. Into Manitoba, maybe Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and beyond. That's the Northwest. It's the prairies. It's the plains, and that's the territory that they're referring to in the title and in Métis history, and a sense of solidarity. That all of these are sort of gelling for the Métis people, and this moment in time is one of the first and important events. The following year, Lord Selkirk has begun licking his wounds and trying to salvage this dream of the Selkirk settlement, and he negotiates with the 5 Soto, and excuse me, I failed to mention there's a Cree band here as well, that will permit the settlement of Anglo farmers in the heart of the Red River country. He writes this. This is the actual treaty that he's written out, and it requires the payment annually of 100 pounds of tobacco and other goods. The word that he uses, which is super interesting, is it has a connotation in the Scottish language to the payment that the poor land users make to their lord. So when he describes, and I read this as I was making this last night. I beg your pardon for not having it nailed down, but the word that Lord Selkirk uses, the Scottish connotation for that is what the poor farmers pay to their lord. They're going to make that payment every year to the Cree and the Soto bands of this region, and it's this is the acknowledgement that it's their land. This is the insignia that you see down there, the little drawings of the fish and it looks like a salamander perhaps. The fish and that's Pegwiss's emblem there of that second to the end there, the one with the short tail, the 4-footed eared thing, and then there's a bear, and this is the drawing that accompanies the treaty that there's Winnipeg at top, Lake Manitoba at left, and the Assiniboine River. These are the territories of Chief Peguis and the other peoples. And this is the region that is permitted now for the Selkirk people. And I just love that tattoo. That is the coolest tattoo of someone remembering the nations that that permitted the settlement of the Selkirk settlement. Here is I don't know if this is easier to see or even harder, but what this lays out is, sort of the beginning of the Selkirk settlement. You've got the Red River flowing north, the Assiniboine River flowing from the east, sort of from maybe 4-5 o'clock down there. Fort Gibraltar is the Northwest Company fort that sits at the Forks, and Fort Douglas is the Hudson Bay headquarters there on Point Douglas on the Red River. It sort of lies, that deepest bend in the river there. The Selkirk settlers, and you can read this carefully as Protestant settlers, are on the west side of the river. The half-breeds, or the Métis, are on the east side. The Demerol. Does anyone know who the Demerol are? The year 1816 sees the disbanding of a Swiss mercenary group that had been, it was founded in Switzerland and sent to fight in the War of 1812. And by 1816, they had been decommissioned. That was the word I was looking for. And so there are all of these soldiers wandering around Montreal and Ottawa, and Lord Selkirk snaps them up and he sends them to Red River to keep a lid on things. These Swiss, very interestingly though, are also Catholic, and they begin the construction of the St. Boniface Cathedral in Red River. This becomes the main church of Catholic Red River settlement, which by this time has about 5,000 people in it, and it becomes a sort of a center of scholarship, where the priests begin to give classes in literacy and religion and history, and they are French. And the Métis, having that Catholic connection through their French ancestry, are drawn there, and they're further encouraged to settle in on the east bank of the Red River. It's the Hudson Bay Company says, yeah, you can begin to settle there. We will record your land holdings, because they have the feeling that the Métis people, it's better to have them close. Keep your enemies closest. Keep your friends close and your enemies closest. They'd rather have them where they can keep an eye on them, rather than living in First Nations communities where they can continue to stir up anti-English sentiment. Is that it? I think. Am I? What time am I supposed to go to? It was 1 to 1:40. Oh, I've got lots of time yet. What were our comments like? Yeah.
Andrew, I have a question about a previous slide.
Okay.
So you had mentioned that Selkirk uses a word that puts the Métis in the Lord position and the Selkirk settlers in a vassal position.
Yes.
I'm just really curious. I studied medieval history, so is it using fiefdom? Like, what is the specific word that they're using?
I think it's actually a Gaelic word. It's a Scottish word.
Okay, cool.
I didn't let you know because I was like, whoa, that's too cool. You know?
Yeah.
He's recognizing that you know, the relationship that the Selkirk settlers have is at the endurance of the actual lords of this place, who are the First Nations, right? Yeah, you studied medieval history.
I have my BA in history before I decided to go into social work. I studied Greco-Roman and medieval medicine and science, so I have a little bit all over the place. But I never studied Canadian history because 18-year-old me was like, "Oh, that's not cool.
Why would I want to know
be
that?
edgy. Why would I?" Yeah. So this is really cool to come in and to learn this.
Good.
So one of the other things that I'm aware of was the intense division between Protestantism and Catholicism.
Yes.
And that still shows up in Winnipeg.
We're going to see more of that, right? You know, eventually we'll see the Orange Men march in, right? And what I love about Selkirk's connection to this is that his first choice for where to move the Scottish settlers is to Northern Ireland. Like, let's not forget that Ireland was colonized by the British. They were treated like any native people. They were subjugated and you know, and dehumanized by the British, who had, you know, this elevated opinion of themselves, and you know, they created animosity that continues to this day in this you know, sort of exporting of the Scottish people, the Protestant Scots, to Northern Ireland, in that enclave of Protestantism, the heart of Orange, William of Orange.
Yeah,
he's the who is William of Orange? I mean, is he a Scotsman or is he an Irishman? Somebody we'll have to nail that down. But
he's a Norman, actually, but
he's where we get hillbillies from. They're the you know, Williams, the Williams who get sent to you know, Appalachia, and history. It's cool. It's so cool, right?
Actually, my mother's family probably has roots there. And they were from Blackpool, Liverpool, or whatever. The original people of Britain that were colonized.
Right. Yeah.
And over the poor horses to come over to work here.
The Bretons. Yeah. Yeah. So any other comments or sort of thoughts related to today's lecture? Because I may end up. Yeah.
Sorry, did you mention they pay 50 pounds of tobacco? Was that what you said, or 50?
100 pounds of tobacco and other goods. Yeah. Yep. That's what they paid annually for the, you know, as their sort of annuity, if you will. This is the word that we use today. I'm gonna have to find the reference again to what word Lord Selkirk uses to identify the First Nations communities as the rightful sort of owners of the land that are you know, enduring the presence of the Scots the Scottish settlers in this area. I'll have to find that again. Oh, wow. Comments just winging it in. Let's see here. When you mentioned that they supplied schooling for the children at the settlement, could this be where the idea for residential school comes from? I
believe so.
Well, yeah, I suppose it's, they are being schooled in specific things. They're being schooled by the Catholic priests, principally in the Christian ethic and in the art of writing. The letters. That material comes from a very specific kind of tradition with specific values attached, right? Whether there is the similar kind of abuse that goes on in this location in Red River, I couldn't say. I could not say, it's certainly not forced attendance. I think Métis people at this time saw advantage, and I think many people saw advantage in having children who can read and write. Right? This is a good thing. Being able to read and write is a good thing. So maybe yes, maybe, what are the similarities exactly? We'd have to explore that, carefully, and we'd have to look for what is the evidence that we would have to see in order to see that? What do you, I don't want to be over nuanced here, but I don't know the answer. I'll just be blunt.
Yeah, one of the realities was that the relationship between the Catholics and the native people changed when the Capuchins, which had been settled in Acadia and worked with the people, were taken over by the Jesuits. And so the Jesuit influence just kept growing and growing and growing. So.
Let's see. Another nerdy history question. If I have time after this class. I'm really glad that you call yourself a nerd, because I almost called you a nerd. It's like, oh, aren't you an awesome nerd? Aren't you?
Trust me, I made a comment in my social work 202 class the other day, and my prof straight up called me a nerd, and I was like, yeah, that's me.
That's me.
But
Own it.
it's not a question that will help anybody else in the class unless they've taken paleography, so I don't want to take up time right now.
I see. I don't even know what that is.
Just the study of handwriting and reading manuscripts and stuff like that. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Huh. Okay, so here's this is Olivia again. Especially since they did it to make sure the Métis wouldn't stir up anti-English sentiment. Yeah, there is that going on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's connect this to something that Frank said. Frank and Cecil, they're the same guy, right? Yeah. Frank here brought up last class that Métis, when we talk about Métis communities, and at this time, there's a very widely sort of divergent set of ideas about who are we and what do we stand for and what's good for me and my people, what's good for my family. There were many Métis people who worked for Hudson Bay Company, who worked for who saw their interests being supported by diverse groups, right? So the French, the francophone priests who are coming in are going to have a political kind of motivation, and they're going to, they're certainly not going to be supportive of things that they see as pagan, or read this as indigenous spirituality. Indigenous spiritual traditions are, they're not good. No, the French are not in favor of these things, and they're going to be very I'm not sure whether they're going to be pro-English or not, because the English, remember, the English and the French have quite a history here, right? And it's not been a happy one. That the English and French fought a war for the domination of North America. And Ottawa and Quebec have been sort of jockeying for voice and power. So yeah, there's going to be some politics involved, and there's going to be some sort of push by the educators for certain values. But among them is that they're being educated in in French, and they're Catholic, which is something that I think lends their teachings some attractiveness, right, to the Métis people who have some of that culture from their ancestry.
Well, the two words that are really strong in that too are papist and anti-papist. And you still run into that a lot, in between St. Boniface and across the river.
So, for those of you who don't, tell what is a papist and what is an anti-papist?
Well, one of the realities was King James decided that he wanted to cut all ties with Rome and become kind of the English Pope, right?
Right.
So are we anchored to the Roman Catholic Church and the infallible Pope, or are we rejecting that altogether?
Or do we have a direct relation with our Savior? Which is the Protestant position, right? That is so it's do we turn towards Rome and the Pope, or do we turn towards the head of the Anglican Church?
Right.
He's the king. Yeah. So that's the essential conflict between Catholic and Protestant. More messages coming in. Let's see here. I'm thinking that maybe they saw it as a way to control Indigenous people, and eventually it morphed into residential schools. It would be hard to kind of be from both sides and figuring out your place in the world. I think you've discovered a thesis topic for a master's here. Is there a connection between the educations of 19th century St. Boniface and residential schools, the development of residential schools? I know this last week. Cowess's First Nation and the Marival school, they received St. Boniface remains the the French, the Catholic, the diocese. It's the head of the diocese for sort of southern Manitoba and Saskatchewan. The Marival journals and all of the records went to St. Boniface from the Marival residential school. And a friend of mine is now in the process of grinding through them. They've this is sort of miraculous that they've been released. So there is a connection. You're convincing me, actually, that there's a connection there. It's whether at the time they had that objective, going forward. I can see looking back that the connection's there. All right, I don't want to talk through the end of our time here. I want to share with you the forum question for the week. Here it is. I'd like you to rewrite the monument the plaque on the monument to remember the Battle of Seven Oaks, to reflect its significance to the Métis Nation. Keep in mind, you must fit your words on a plaque, 150 words or less for the entire entry. So what I want you to do is to, instead of writing a plaque that sort of, I think has messages about the rightful, it's sort of from an Anglo perspective, it sort of puts forward the righteousness of the of Governor Semple and the questionable moral motivations of the Métis, who are really just a tool of the Northwest Company. I want you to turn it around, and I want you to write from, what does this mean for the Métis people? Okay? So you're gonna write 150 words, something that'll fit on a plaque. The assignment is not to be rude or to be ugly, but to write an honest, this is what we remember. This is what we should remember when we think of this event and this location. Okay?
Okay.
All right, my friends, I'm going to let you go a little early. Before I'm asked, I have not finished marking the forums. I'll do them. I'll complete them this weekend and have them up.
The forums are usually due on Sunday.
They will be due before Sunday, before midnight Sunday.
Okay.
So quick. This is a quick and dirty one. There's lots of good material in very specifically labeled chapters in your text. And you can also draw from the lecture. Okay.
Andrew,
Yes, Barbara.
I did do my forum. It said it was posted, but you said you